You know why? Because I think we're swiping in the wrong spot. But he just came and swiped right.
Does it look right? Is it adjusted right? Or?
Yeah. Yes. Okay.
There we go.
Turn around and have it do selfies like you did for your...
I saw that, yeah, then we knew what was going on. So, well, good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Sunday 2 of our hospital visitation. That's what we'll be doing this morning and stuff. Just a little kind of going through again, just a little bit of a review. You got the very first page of your chaplain visitation schedule where it says a checklist before going to the hospital. We got some music. Oh, that's right there. All right. I thought I turned that thing off. Is that the game going on already, or?
No, it was a worship song, actually.
Okay.
The applause for the intro.
Good answer.
I'm not a sports girl.
Just we'll go over when I go through these procedures, but just one of the things to always remember when you're going to the hospital visitation, always pray before you go, and just ask the Lord, you know, what will you have me do when I go in there? So it's just a powerful thing and a privilege and an honor every time we get to go in and just make a difference in someone's life. Always remember that when you're going in there, people are lonely, people are probably a little bit afraid, and they're just, you know, the norm is not going on. So it is a blessing for each and every single one of us to be able to go to these hospital visitations. I think I left off on what would be like our third page of the hospital visitation where it talks about our attitude, to prepare our attitude. I'll just pick it up from there, and then I gave you another handout this morning. It's called Chaplain on-call visiting procedures, and we'll bounce into that as soon as I go through this, the rest of this teaching insert here. So, but our attitudes, we always want to make sure that our attitude is that of encouragement and assurance, giving them emotion for emotion. You guys find where I'm at? Third page of the teaching insert. It says to mourn with those who mourn and weep with those who weep. Many of the people that you're visiting in the hospital, they're nervous and they're scared and they need support and they need comfort. When you walk into their room, you need to be calm, cheerful, and positive. When you leave the hospital, you want the patient to be uplifted, just as much as can be expected. You know, it will go into some situations where, you know, there's a pretty dire need that's going on. You may go into an end-of-life, you know, type of a call, but even in an end-of-life call, which can be very sad because this person's getting ready to, you know, leave this part of his life, but, you know, always remembering, especially, you know, if the person's a Christian, they're basically going to go from one phase or one stage of life into the next. Because those people that are born again, you know, we never die. You know, it's just a wild concept that God put together. I mean, they will pass right from here and they'll pass right into eternity, to a whole another different stage of life. And of course, you've got, you know, the family members that are there and they're mourning because they lost someone. But there'll be sometimes when you have the awesome experience to be able to just kind of be with someone as they pass from this life into the next. It's a really cool experience if you've never ever experienced that before. You'll get that more if you join the end of life with end of life ministry with Shirley and stuff. But I've done that quite a few times. It's awesome. Lisa.
When I did hospice nursing years ago, there was like a poem that this brings to mind. And it's of a ship sailing on a horizon, and as the ship gets smaller and smaller to us on the living side, you know, you know, the person gradually passes away. On the other side, you have somebody going, oh, here she comes. Oh. So you have somebody on the other side welcoming.
Right.
So it was just beautiful, and I used to give that to patients.
And always keep this in mind. You know, it can be a very sad type of thing because you've got a lot of different things that are going on in the atmosphere in regards to emotions of people that are around and stuff. But always keep in mind that the Bible says that there's angels that come and take them towards heaven. Yes. And you can see, you know, in Luke and stuff where it talks about the rich man and Lazarus, and when Lazarus died, it says that the angels, you know, escorted him, you know, into heaven. So there's always a place and a point in time when that person is going to be I'll say more heavenly minded than earthly minded, but what will happen is the things of the natural really will get less and less. I mean, you can see people smile, it's just an awesome thing when people are experiencing, as they're getting closer, to death. One time when I was in hospice with one hospice nurse, she said people usually leave one way or another. They usually leave kicking and screaming, or they usually leave very peaceful. So, and our deal is to help bring that peace and that comfort. And remember, when you're talking to someone in the hospital, whether it's just a regular hospital visit, someone had a surgery, or whether someone maybe is on their last days here on this earth, if they're not conscious, always remember they can hear you.
Yes.
They can pick you up. It's a spirit-to-spirit type of a scenario that people can hear. So, and I do that by experience. I've had a lot of doctors say, hey, they can't hear you, and there's scientific studies that they can't hear you, but there's been 4 or 5 times my experiences where some people were totally out, and they came back and they would tell me of the experience they had, what we said, even what color shirt I had on, just different things like that. So always remember, you go in there, well, some people say, well, they can't really hear you. Go up and talk to them, just like I'm talking to you guys, and just, speak into their ear, speak right next to them, and, just bring that prayer of encouragement and comfort. Sure.
I know that I read this book a long time ago, but last night I was watching Heaven is for Real, the movie, and if you're kind of hesitant about the end of life or near-death experiences, that's a really good movie. It was well done. It was well done.
So it's called Heaven is for Real.
Heaven is for Real.
Okay.
It's on cable now, so it's not the phone.
All right, so you're going to be pretty realistic and...
It's fun to watch if you're afraid of dying.
Okay.
So it was just a fun movie. Just a fun movie.
Amen. Karen?
You can bring peace to them, because I had my care home for 17 years. And 160 people that passed in my home, only one died of congestive heart failure, kicking, one. Because I was always with them, I was always feeling the atmosphere with the Lord. And there's a lady, her name's Alberta, where my father-in-law is. And when I went in Friday, she was hysterical in her bed, she was thrashing, the aide came out, was mad. And I said, well, she's in pain. So I waited till aide left, I went in, I prayed for her because she's a Christian, her and I used to talk about God. I just kept going, the peace of God, the peace of God, the peace of God. She calmed down, and every time I walked by the room, she was sleeping. So you can bring that peace.
So here's another testimony. So.
You can bring that peace to them.
That's so cool.
Instead of getting mad at them.
Right, exactly. Here's the last paragraph in regards to this, the attitude. It's not how much you know about hospital procedures or medical information that the family's looking for. They're just happy that someone cared enough to come by and to be with them during a difficult time in their lives. Just being there when they are going through a time of crisis is very, very important. A lot of times people won't remember exactly what you said, but they'll remember that you came.
Yes.
I remember when you came. I remember when you came.
And they'll remember you when you're out and about, and they'll see you, and they'll come and talk to you, and you're saying, and it's going through your mind, okay, which one is this one? Which one is this one? So, it's kind of fun that way, too.
Yeah, I just consider it an honor and a privilege. All right, let's talk about prayer. Prayer is one of the most important factors in a hospital visit. The fact that we go is very, very important, but then when we go, your whole thing is when you go, you want to pray. Okay, you visit and stuff, don't forget to pray. Because sometimes you can just visit, especially if you know them. But the main thing that we're going there is we're just to release that prayer. So Mark 16:18 tells us that signs and wonders will follow those who believe. One of those signs is that we'll lay hands on the sick and they shall recover. Our part is to pray a prayer of faith and then leave the rest up to God.
Amen.
So I've got some scripture verses here just to kind of build up your faith, and there's all kinds of different scripture verses, but I just wrote these things down. Just a few down. It says we're to pray for the sick and they'll recover. Matthew 10, Jesus sent out his disciples to heal the sick. John 14:12-14, greater works shall you do because I go to the Father. In Isaiah 53, by Jesus' stripes or by his scourgings, it says that we're healed. These last two paragraphs are pretty important in regards to prayer. I want you to think about this. Every time you go on a visit, pray and believe that God will heal that person that you're praying for. But never offer a patient a false sense of hope. Never tell a patient, you're now healed. Never tell a patient, well, you just need more faith and you'll get better. You know, you would think no one would in their right mind say that, but I've had people that have went on visitations and have said those type of things to people. Let God get the glory by allowing the medical team to discover that something miraculous has happened. In all cases, when you pray, ask the whole family to join hands while you're praying. This will bring the family support and comfort. The family is also processing their emotion and fear for their loved ones. Pray for the family members also. And most families don't pray out loud for their loved ones while they're in the hospital, even Christian families. A lot of times because of just the trauma that they're going through, the grief that they're going through, because they're probably, you know, we haven't done the grief teaching, but they're probably going through, you know, 3 different areas of grief, you know, when these things are going on. But a lot of times our greatest thing we can do is to pray for people. There might be some times when you go into a hospital and, you know, even though we're praying that God will heal someone, the Lord might even tell you that this person is not going to make it. Because the reality of what we do and the reality of people that we visit, not everyone will make it. You'll pray for people at times and those people will die. But you know what the Lord's told us to do is that we're to pray. And then it's up to God whether that person gets healed or not. But you have to be very, very careful. If you felt like the Lord said this person's not going to make it, you have to be very careful what you say to the family, what you don't say to the family. You know, what we want to do is we have to be an emotional support, you know, for people and stuff. And, you know, if you're just feeling that that person's not going to be healed or they're at the very, very end of life, there comes a point in time when it gets to end of life, and we're not really doing the end of life teaching right now, but I'll just, you know, add that in to where you're not praying for that person to be healed any longer, but you're praying for comfort. You're praying for that person at times would even pass away quickly, especially if their body's eaten with cancer and maybe it's been a long-term scenario with a family, and the family is just tired and weary, and there will come to certain points in times where you're going to experience those type of things, you know. But those are conversations you have with the family. They know that that person's getting ready to pass away, and the whole, and I'm not going to go into this teaching right now, but the whole prayer of release, that's a whole another prayer that you pray. I'm talking about here praying, you know, a prayer of faith, and that you're believing that that person's going to get healed, whatever going on in that person's body. And we want to go in, and that's going to be the majority of times when you're going in, that we're praying that God's going to do a healing, that God's going to do a restoration, God's going to do a strengthening. But there will come a time when you'll be faced possibly with a situation where you need to know about what a prayer release is. And we'll study that when we get into the end of life care, because that's a very powerful prayer to pray over someone also. I've seen people pass away in literally an hour from a time of actually a prayer of release. And there's a whole family dynamic that's there. We'll talk about all that when we get into that time frame. But when we're doing hospital visits, for the most part, 90-some-odd% of what you're doing in these hospital visits is someone's in there, they're sick, they're just alone, or they've just gotten through a hospital visit, and we're praying for their bodies to be totally healed and restored. And I've seen that happen numerous times also, where God's totally done a healing work and stuff. Any questions on this little area or comments here? Yes, Irene.
I have a friend that she's been my friend for 15 years. And her father passed away Tuesday. He was age 99. She left me a message. I called her a couple of days ago. And she said, at the end, he'd been sick for 16 years. Cancer, heart disease, everything. And now the heart had failed, so was the lungs were full of water and everything. But anyway, she said, I was praying for him that my father had suffered enough. 16 years, that was my prayer. And she said, when I got there, he'd gone into a coma. So he was in a coma, but she got his hand. And these are things that this lady does. She got his hand and began to talk to him, and she noticed he didn't have his glasses. And she said, I didn't want my dad to wake up and not see who I was. She got his glasses and put them on his face, and she had his hand, and she was saying, Dad, I'm here, Dad, I'm here, whatever. He opened his eyes, came out of the coma, and saw her. And he said, thank you. For 16 years, my friend has taken care of her dad. And the last he had to go to hospice. But He opened his eyes and he held her hand. She said it's so tight because he had no strength. And he thanked her for the last 16 years. He closed his eyes and went home with the Lord.
Yeah.
And I went, Margot, you're making me cry. She said, yes. And I kissed him and I kissed him and on his face. And I said, Dad, I love you, I love you, I love you. But Pastor, she didn't want her father. She just knew he was going to open his eyes, put on his glasses, so he would know it was her, not a nurse, not somebody else.
Amazing.
And he saw that it was her, and then he passed.
Yeah.
Isn't that beautiful?
That's awesome. There are so many different stories that go on there, and always, just remember, there's all kinds of things that are going on in the spirit realm, in the supernatural realm. But sometimes when we come in and we see somebody, it can kind of knock your faith, out a little bit and stuff. But that's why you got to pray before you go, and we're just praying and believing that God will touch people. God wants to touch people more than we want to see people touched and stuff. So, okay, the very last page on this thing, praying before surgery. There may be a time when you might get a call to go on a hospital visit, and someone's getting ready to go into surgery. People just love to have people pray before they actually go into a surgery. Surgery sometimes can be a very scary thing, even if it's a very, very simple operation, when someone's going under. And there may be times when you might get a call and say, hey, can you go and be able to pray with them before they actually go into surgery. So when you receive a call that someone is having surgery, find out the surgery time, the hospital, try to be there and pray for the patient and the family before they go into the surgery. Stay with the family during this. If you can do this, stay with the family during the surgery time. Once the patient is in recovery, pray for the family, thank them for successful surgery, speedy recovery. This is usually what the pastors usually do because they got the time where they can do that. I know sometimes Shirley's done it. If you're retired and you can stay with the family, hey, that's great. But most of your guys' visits will be probably just doing the hospital visits, kind of like an in and out type of thing. It'll take you longer to drive there and drive home than really what your hospital visit actually is. Will probably be the majority what you guys will be seeing. But if you stay there, once a person comes out of recovery, it's okay to dismiss yourself and just call the chaplain ministry dispatcher and give them an update on the status. That's something you're going to be doing on every single visit that you do. We'll talk about that here in a minute. And then I just finished writing this thing out. Thank you so much for your desire to visit those who are sick in need of God's strength. And I pray that the Lord will use you in divine appointments every time you visit somebody. So, amen. Well, that's our chaplain visitation, hospital visit deal. Let's just turn over to the on-call thing. This thing kind of just kind of duplicates some of the thing, but this is what you'll actually do and procedures that you'll do when you're actually going through the visit, and then what you do after you've gone through a chaplain visit. So, again, you guys are going to be on. You'll be on this chaplain schedule. I think I gave you guys a deal on this. After, when we get done with class today, could you let Shirley know, and just be thinking about this, if you have a preference of a day of the week, like this would be a good day for me to do a hospital visitation. This would be, if you don't do a hospital visitation, you will be doing a call, because that will be your day. Let Shirley know if you have a preference or you don't have a preference. Thank you. If you've got a day that is easier for you or better for you, let us know. Because then what we'll do is we'll put you on the visitation schedule that will come out in January. Okay, so you guys won't do anything in December, but in January, whenever Cindy Ashton is, she's our chaplain that puts that together, and you guys will be on one of these days of the week. Okay.
And when you're considering the day that you're going to be on here, you will be on all day. So, for example, if you call you at night that you have a scheduled visit the next day, you might have to go at 8 o'clock in the morning, 9 o'clock in the morning, and it's all day long. So it's not that you're going to be there all day long. It's just that you might have a couple in between.
I was wanting to say this to you, Pastor Sam. I don't drive at night. I can't see.
Okay.
That's all right.
Is that all right?
That's
I didn't know if you wanted me to exit out.
No.
I can't.
No,
I have
because
trouble night driving.
Yeah, no. Usually it's done by 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so But I like to get the reports at kind of like 6 o'clock so I can schedule for
For
the
the
next
next
time.
day, okay.
Is it common to do more than one? Is it? And
Sometimes,
within a day?
sometimes I've done 3 in one day, so, you know, it just depends.
Depends.
That's more, I haven't really scheduled anybody to do 3, but, you know, sometimes that happens, but sometimes you might not even get any. Well, you'll at least get a call. Usually, the main thing is you're usually making a call versus a visit. It just depends on who we've got, you know, in the hospital, if there's an emergency or something going on, or if someone's in long-term, you know, care, we'll try to, you know, schedule that like every other day or
And we
something
don't
like
have a
that,
lot of
so.
long terms right now,
Mm-mm.
so it's,
Kind of goes in waves, even with hospital.
Yep,
yes.
Hospitalization.
yep,
I'm a
it always does.
doctor.
So, and a lot of times, you know what I'll do is, I'll send out an email and schedule probably 3-4 days in advance, you know, and then if something comes up, something goes in the hospital, we would bounce the calls and have someone visit, like Pat just came in Obenauer. She said, hey, I'm supposed to go visit Thelma Crawford Monday. She goes, is it okay if I go the next day? And I said, yeah, that you can go the next day. Now, we have somebody the next day that's going someplace else, you know, or whatever, but it's okay if she, you know, goes the next day. Or if you get the calls and for some reason you didn't make them that day, you know, make them the next day. Something came up, something happened, just make them the next day. But whenever we do a hospital visit, that needs to be done. You know, if we call, that needs to be done that day because something's going on and someone will be on the next day. You can't float that on the next day. Thelma's long-term, she's in that assisted care living. So in that regards, and we have another person by the name of Alex Arce. And we usually have the guys go and visit him. He's long-term, he's at his mom's house. And we have to call to make sure when is a good time when we can actually go and see him. So even though Vince maybe is on a Friday as his visit day, he might not go till that next Monday. But he knows that, so he's not doing anything on that Friday, but he could go that next Monday. It just depends on if there's doctor's appointments or, you know, things like that. So there is a little bit of flexibility in there. But what Shirley's getting at is whenever the visit's made, we need the report immediately. So, because when we send somebody out the next time, we need to kind of know what was the status and how is that person doing and are they still in that room and were they going to be released? And,
Especially if they're in the hospital or in hospice.
right. Those are the most important ones, okay? So, but for the most part, you probably, the majority of the time, you'll be getting calls versus having to go and visit someplace, so. All right, let's just go down through this chaplain on-call visiting procedures. The importance of the chaplain on-call visit, whether it's a hospital, adult care, nursing home, or a phone call. So when it says on-call visit, you could be doing any of those above. So how the calendar is written. So it's chaplain on-call calendar. It consists of all the active chaplains. The calendar is placed in your box approximately on the 20th of the month. And you guys know where the chaplain box is now, right? Has everybody
Yes.
found out where your those boxes are at? Okay, in the lunchroom. And the chaplain chooses a day of the month that would best suit their schedule. And each month you want to look at the calendar to be sure that the date is good for you. Number 3, please be available and ready on those days that you're assigned to do the visits and or the calls. This is very important. Because if you miss your visit or call, that person might not get a touch that day. If you cannot do the day that you're assigned, you're responsible to cover your shift with another chaplain. If for some reason you know in that month, hey, I'm going to be gone, just call and ask someone else that's on the calendar, hey, could you flop with me? And you guys will all have a phone number where you can actually call and do that. Because if it comes back to like a Shirley or myself or something, we might have to make a ton of calls just to try to cover that day. So we want you guys to kind of do that, because in that way you can switch a day with someone else, and then we just switch the calendar. It makes it makes it a whole lot easier. If you have an emergency that comes up, we'll try and cover it. We understand emergencies come up, but just communicate really well with who it will be. Is actually Michelle is going to take over the dispatching for me that I was doing the 1st through the 15th. So Pastor Michelle's going to do that. Thank you, Michelle, for doing that. And then Shirley has the 16th through the end of the month. So that's, depending on what part of the calendar you're on, you might get your emails or phone calls or texts from either Pastor Michelle, or you might get them from Shirley.
And if it's a text that you want to receive with me, because I never know if they get through, please let me know that you got it.
Just K
Yeah.
works. So
Just
if you would prefer to get a text,
Text you. You will probably get everything by phone call.
Okay.
yeah.
I didn't understand what K meant.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. This, yeah, just meant okay.
Oh, okay, so I can just do K?
Yeah,
God, you're making it easy for
Yeah.
me.
Yes.
K and send. Do you do, Irene, do you do text messages? Oh, okay, well, great. So we do text.
But I can
messages.
do K? I
Okay.
can even do okay.
All right. Well, once you start texting, you learn to just, one button.
My grandchildren, 14, choom, choom,
I
choom.
know.
Yeah.
And if you prefer the text, let us know, because sometimes, some people don't look at their emails often, or they're out or whatever. I've got some of the chaplains, Susan Ratliff, she doesn't look at her emails, but she'll text me immediately. So I learned I need to, so I'm letting you know, Michelle, as we talk out loud, I'll let you know when we do this, but, she would rather get a text than get an email, because it might be 2 or 3 days before she even looks at her email, so just let us know which is the best way to contact you guys, so, and that'll work out really good. Okay, where am I at? If you need another chaplain, if you need to call another chaplain, use your monthly schedule, you can just see who's on the schedule, and who's on the next day. You can just switch with anyone, doesn't really matter, just as long as they're okay and you're okay with making the switch, so. On an average, you'll be signed 1 day a month. Now that we've got 9 more people going on the schedule, that's true. At one time, we didn't have enough people, and sometimes they had 2 days of the month. So if you guys come in on the schedule, everybody you'll just have one day of the month on the calendar visiting schedule. So on the day of your visit, you will receive an email or a call or a text from the visitation dispatcher. And I don't know what Shirley does. I do it like kind of 2 and 3 days in advance. That's what I do. What do you do? 1 day? Okay.
1 day, because I don't know, like the hospital visits, I don't know if we need to send one the next day also.
Correct. Okay. 'Cause that's the thing about me doing them 2 and 3 days in advance. I might totally screw up because all of a sudden now we got a hospital visit and I've told you to make 2 calls. And then I have to come back and say, hey, don't do these 2 calls, do this. And so it kind of redoes the schedule. For me, I needed to just sit down at one time and do it because with many things I was doing, that's what made it easy for me. And I only had to change it a couple times, so.
I used to do them in the morning, and then I found that some people forget, so I started doing them at night, in the evening before or the afternoon before. That way they have a little bit of time to remember that.
Schedule it.
And you guys can kind of see what you're doing for your day also. You know, am I making a call, am I doing a visit,
Yes.
you know, that type of thing.
But you really should be responsible for looking at this every month. And remember, because it gets a little frustrating sometimes when people forget, so, oh, I didn't know I was on, I'm doing this and I'm doing that, so.
None of you guys will do that, I know that.
I know you guys are not gonna do that.
You got a backup list?
No,
Backup list is
yeah,
us.
we make the calls or whatever, so.
I mean, I know Michelle's not gonna go out and do the backup list.
No.
That person just won't get in touch that month.
Yeah, we ended up, if something happens, we
Yeah,
might
if
have to
you're-
skip it or something.
If you're on that day, you're on, but if there's an emergency, then.
Right. And it's an exception, not the rule, so, it works out.
Yep.
Okay, number 7. Specific information will be given to you to help you with the visit. If for some reason Shirley doesn't or Michelle doesn't give you some of this information, ask for that information. I will tell you, sometimes we don't get a lot of information, so we've got to try to get the information the best we can. But you want to make sure you've got the hospital care center name. You want to know the name of the patient. That's very important. And there may be sometimes when you get there, if we send you to a certain area, and there's different times when we don't know the person's real name. Like go and visit Steve Audio. You won't find him as Steve. His name is Eugene. So there's been times when we've made mistakes like that. When Kay Stewart was in the hospital, Kay's name is Francis. I didn't know that. And so there's going to be different times when that comes out. But so if you get there and they don't have that name, it could be something as simple as it's under another name. So anyway, I'm just telling you that. Hopefully you'll never have to experience that. But if for some reason we sent you to that hospital, just hang there, call the dispatch, call us. While you're there, and we'll usually someone knows in the office or whatever, so.
Usually, and also sometimes we don't get the correct information. And what I do, Michelle, is I usually call the hospital in the morning to make sure that my information is correct. And if I don't get a chance, then I tell them to check with the people downstairs.
Yeah, so we always want to make sure, because, sometimes people will get released, quicker than what they say. I mean, it just, you just never know. So anyway, I'm just kind of giving you guys heads up if you've never done hospital visitation. So get their room number, are they in ICU, are they in the emergency room, that type of thing. You should be getting all that type of thing. And usually we'll tell you what's wrong. We'll usually tell you what's happened. They got in an accident, they're going in for an operation, whatever. We'll kind of tell you what's happened. So you can kind of prepare yourself, when you're going in. So, and then number 8, please pray before you go to the hospital or the care center or make a call. That way you're preparing yourself, you're preparing your heart, which will allow you to change the atmosphere when you go in. So on all your visits, you want to wear your name badge. As you guys graduate, you'll end up getting a badge that Shirley has right there. But if you've just got your chaplain badge, just wear the chaplain, even if it says chaplain in training. It really, really helps when you show that you're a chaplain or something. It just, the nurses and stuff, they really help us out when we go into the hospital and stuff. Have mints, and we've gone through all of that. Carry a small pocket Bible with you. If you like to read scripture, you want to read scripture to people. When you guys graduate, we'll give you a little Bible that'll look like that. That's not really a pocket Bible, but and a lot of you maybe even have Bible on your phone. I don't know, I do. So I carry my phone, and I just will
But
use
when you
my
go to the
Bible phone.
hospitals, they kind of look at this and they don't ask you any questions, they just let you through.
Yeah, it really helps.
And I can't ever find it.
And electronics can fail you.
Yes, they can, yeah, you're absolutely right. Depending on what room you're in or whatever's going on and whatever kind of monitors are going on, so. And if you don't, I carry a small pocket Bible, that's just a suggestion and stuff, but, if you have scripture verses in your heart and you know what you're gonna pray, sometimes, I've only been asked this a couple of times, and it was more elderly than it was younger people, but they just said, could you read me a scripture verse? And so, usually there's a Bible, sometimes in some of those rooms, but if not, they're going to want you to read a scripture verse. So I always have my phone with me and stuff. And I just say, do you have a favorite scripture verse? And those 2 times, thank God I knew what it was. And but if it didn't at times, you're like, well, okay. So it helps if you've got a Bible with you.
And I have it in both, I have it in my phone, but I like to carry the Bible.
Show them what else you got in there. I'm going to get to that here in a second, but just show them your little, see, that way she also has these. Did I give everybody these cards?
You
Okay,
got
good.
these, this is from last, when I first started.
So those will come in handy. She just tucks those in her Bible, which is what I do now, is I put it in the Bible because they don't really fit in your pocket if you're a guy, because they're a little bit too big, but of course, ladies, if you got a purse. But those really, really come in handy. What those are is they just let you know if, for some reason, you might go and we ask you to go on a hospital visit, you go in there and guess what? They're up in X-ray, or they're whatever, they might not be there. Or if you come in, they might be asleep. And I'm not encouraging you to wake people when they're sleeping, because when they're there, they need to rest. Sometimes I'll stand in the room for just a very short minute. I'll just pray real quietly, and then I'll just fill out that thing, and I'll just put it on their table. I don't wake. If people are asleep, I don't wake them.
And you have, there's not a whole lot of room on this, but you can also put a scripture on there if you want. But on the back, it's got, hi, the person's name, and then there's room for you to put your name in
Yeah,
here.
just lets them know that a chaplain was there to come by and see and stuff. It means a lot to the families. I've had families call when we had that thing and thank us for coming by and stuff, even though the person was, once I talked to the chaplain, they go, hey, they were asleep. I said, well, they were so thankful that we came by and it was a card. So that does really mean something, that, someone had come by and, was praying for you while you slept.
And the cards are a lot easier than trying to go and find a little piece of paper to leave them a note.
Yeah. The other thing, like I say, they could, sometimes if they're getting a procedure done or they're an X-ray or something like that, I'll ask the nurse, do you know how long they're going to be? Sometimes the nurse will know, sometimes the nurse ain't going to give you the time of day. Just depends on what's going on with them, type of thing. And you don't take offense to that. We just say thank you, and you can wait a couple minutes, and then if not, just fill out the little card, because I want you guys to know that if they're not in their room or they are sleeping, that's a visit, okay? That's a contact by just filling out that card. It's not like, I didn't fulfill my mission, I didn't get to lay hands on them, and, you know, if they're sleeping, and let them sleep, and just fill out a card, and if you can wait for a few minutes, fine, but then if not, don't worry about that. And just depending on the situation, there might be families sitting in a waiting room or something, you know, you could ask, you know, or they might even be in the room, you know, waiting for them to come back or something like that, but you can ask the nurse or whatever, hey, is there any family, if you weren't able to make the visit, you know, and the nurse will say, as far as I know, no, you know, so then don't worry about it, you know, just leave the card, you made the visit, and report back, was sleeping, was out, whatever, left the card. And that's how you would respond back on that. And that is a chaplain visit, okay?
And you may get some real strange things have happened to me, where I've gone to visit somebody in the hospital, and there's a person in there that doesn't want anyone to visit the person. So what I do is I just pray with them outside. And with this particular visit, I was allowed to go in the room and pray with the patient. But sometimes they don't want you to be in the room, so you just pray with them outside.
Right.
Who doesn't want you in the room?
It could be a relative.
Oh, okay, I see.
Well, I don't know if I told you this guy's example of a hospital visit or not. Did I tell you the one? Well, anyway, I'll just tell you. If you've heard it, then just nod your head. Just
Pretend like you didn't hear it.
yeah.
Or listen to it again.
This is one kind of like what Shirley was talking about. I got a call that there was a gentleman in the hospital and needed to go and visit him. So I kind of knew the name, and what happened here was this was a blended family type of a marriage. White lady married Hispanic male, okay? So I've called to visit the guy. I heard his name, I knew he had been in church before, but he wasn't in very good shape at all. So when I went in to do this hospital visit, he was in the bed, and around the room looked like a lot of his grandkids. So I went in, I introduced myself and stuff like that. Most of the kids in there looked like they were pretty much all in a gang. It was that kind of an atmosphere when I went in, you know, type of thing. But what made it even a little bit more awkward is when I went up and introduced myself to the guy who was in bed, and one of the granddaughters was right next to him holding his hand and stuff. And I told him who I was, and hey, I just come to pray for you. I introduced myself to everybody that was around, so they knew what I was doing, and just kind of sit there, just kind of stood around the room a little bit. Just no one really wanted to say hi. When I'm looking at the guys, they got a bandana, you know, down right here, and they're all tatted out and stuff. So it wasn't the most inviting, you know, scenario and stuff. But hey, said I'm Pastor Sam, and come from Skyway Church. Got a call and to come and pray for it. I can't remember the guy's name. I think his name was Sergio. Come to pray for Sergio, and I said, well, is it okay if I, pray for him? And they, the daughter said, yeah. So I went up and I spoke to Sergio, and I said, hey, I'm Pastor Sam, introduced myself, and he just really wasn't responding. And I said, hey, I've come to pray for you. Is that okay if I pray for you? And he did this. Well, everybody in the room saw that he did this. So I didn't know if he understood me or not, so I said it again. And he did this. And so I could see the granddaughter. She was the one that was the most open, everybody else was not. And I said, do you think he understands? And she goes, I'm not sure, let me ask him. And so she bent down and spoke into his ear. And she said who I was, blah, blah, blah. And he came to pray. And he again did this. And so I just said, okay. I said, hey, no problem. I don't have to pray for him right here. I don't want to, disturb him or whatever. If that's going to upset him, I won't pray for him. I can just pray for him when I leave out of the room. Hey, it was nice to meet all you guys, and I want to let you know I will be praying for him. And I left. I left out of the room. So you might say, well, wait a minute, you didn't do what you're supposed to do there. I would have created all kinds of problems with the family if I would have went ahead and prayed anyways. So you got to acknowledge. Now, one thing, does a person not know? Do they not understand? I don't know, but it was specific enough to me to find out the guy was saying no. Why? I don't know. I don't have a clue.
Sounds to me like it was the gang.
The atmosphere.
But you know what? Also, I have found out that because of culture, they don't want you there. So those that are of other cultures, it's a lot easier for us to go in
Yeah.
and minister to families.
Well, what ended up happening is I went out of that room, and as I was coming out of that room into a waiting room, this was at West Valley, so you come out of the room, there's like a waiting room, then there's the elevators.
Yeah.
And there was a group of people that said, Pastor Sam, and I looked over at them, I didn't really recognize them, and I said, yeah, so I just walked over there, and they said, did you go in and visit Sergio? And I said, yeah, I did. And then they introduced themselves, and then I began to recognize one of the ladies. I didn't really know her that well. And she goes, did he let you pray for him? And I said, no, ma'am, he really didn't want me to pray for him. And then they began saying, well, that's my husband. And so she wasn't even in the room with the other part of the family. You know, she was out there with her family, you know, type of thing. So then I just started talking to them and stuff, and you know, of course they were visibly upset. You know, they're going to transfer him over to, right next to West Valley, they have the hospice, the long-term care facility, I forget what it's called, it might be called, is it? Okay, the Palm Valley or whatever it's called. So they were going to transfer him over there basically into the hospice type of thing. So I was able to talk with them, I sat down with them, so I spent, you know, 15, 20, 30 minutes, talked with them, prayed with them. So that could be, you know, you just never know when you go into different situations what you might encounter. But again, they all knew that the pastor came. They all would know that a chaplain came.
Yes.
And if anything, they would know that they respected the fact that their dying grandfather, the dying uncle, whoever, whatever this guy was to these people, shook his head and said, no, you know, be that right or be that wrong, that's just how I handled that, situation. I respected what they had to say and stuff. He ended up dying, and Pastor Nick ended up doing the funeral, you know, here at Skyway, and a lot of those people came, you know, to their grandfather's funeral. They got to hear, you know, the gospel message and stuff. So, you know, that's just one situation that you might come into play with, you know, and that's okay if you do that.
That's why you need to have an open mind when you go in, because you don't know what you're going to. You shouldn't expect anything, because anything can happen.
Yeah.
But you know, people are people, and most of the time they're really open.
I've done, literally I could say I've probably done thousands of visits. That's the only time someone ever said they shook their head no. That I really found out that he was saying no and he understood.
But being Hispanic and you were with a Hispanic, they respected you for
Yes.
respecting him.
Yes, they did.
They respected you for respecting him.
Yeah, and I said it out loud. I said, I can see that for whatever reason he doesn't want me to pray, so I'm not going to pray for him here in the room. But I want to let y'all know that I will be praying for you guys and for him, you know, when I leave. But I don't want to upset him. And so I said that. I gave everybody eye contact. I didn't want to, you know, because now there's an elephant in the room. You know, the white guy walked into the room and asked to pray. And he said, no, you know, what are you going to do? And so I just acknowledged the fact that, you know, for whatever reason, you just never know. But I will tell you this, out of all the visits that I've ever done, that's the only time someone, you know, shook their head no. You know, the guy could have been upset at God. The guy he was a Christian, but he just could have been upset. Again, one thing, please, you got to remember, take yourself out of the equation, whatever you do, because you can go in there and get embarrassed, you can go in there and maybe get your feelings hurt or whatever, but you got to always remember this, it's not about you.
That's right.
It's about that family, it's about that person that's there, and it's not anything that you've done. Again, you're going into predetermined situations, things that have been going on for years in a person's life, and then who knows what they're processing, you know, right at that moment when they're there. But always remember, we still carry that atmosphere of peace. We still carry that dynamic.
Yeah,
Yes,
I'm just
Trina.
thinking about that as a situation. I was asked to minister a song at the funeral of a friend of mine who was Messianic Jewish lady. Her mom had accepted Christ, but she was older and she had to keep it a secret. She lived in a Jewish community building, and it was shame to her, unfortunately, that she didn't want them to know she was a Christian, but she accepted Christ before she died. Well, I couldn't minister any songs that said Jesus.
Right.
But for me, I knew what I was bringing.
There you go.
I knew who I was ministering to, what about the peace of, and inside my mind, I know I'm worshiping the Lord, and, you know, it wasn't about me. I can't judge or say, well, you shouldn't be, if you deny me, and, you know, I wasn't gonna quote that scripture to her, like, or question why, you know, your mom was so embarrassed, that's, shame on you. It wasn't about that. It was
Right.
about, that's between you and God. That,
Exactly.
I'm just gonna minister. And the song that I chose was, it just touched the heart. You could see people's hearts still move, but I knew the Spirit of Christ was in me, bringing that forth too at the same time, so.
So usually when we're going in, we're not going in to preach.
Amen.
We're not going in to judge. We're not going in to say, oh, well, if you did this will be, you know, our deal is to go in to bring care, to bring comfort, and to pray for people. That's the main goal that we're doing. Now, you know, the Lord may give you a word of wisdom, that sort of thing. But again, just be careful how, when you're when you go in there to minister, basically we're just going in there to bring comfort and to bring care. That's our role. You know, if they need counseling, they're going to need counseling when they get out of the hospital. If they, you know what I'm saying? But, you know, it's okay if, you know, if you're seeing certain things that are going on, and speak to them. But just at that time, life is different. Life is upside down when a person's laying in a hospital bed. Okay? And again, you guys are going to use discernment. You're going to use wisdom. But I give you just a couple of these examples in case you ever come up, you know, with something like that. And again, the things that I'm telling you are the exceptions versus the rule. You know, the thing that I told you about the guy that had, you know, his chest was open and had the heart thing. I told you that, guys, that, you know, that story. That's the exception rule. That's never, ever happened. You know, again, just blew me away. And again, out of hundreds or thousands of visits, you get these little wild things that become a testimony that you're able to encourage other people that, you know, hey, I was thinking this when I went in there, but God had a different plan, and God did that, and He did it spite me, you know, type of thing. So, you know, the thing is, we go, and the Lord will use us. You'll leave an impression and a mark on the people when you go and you visit them. Just the fact that we go. Amen.
And find out, again, no one ever makes a mistake. No one makes a mistake, so. everything's
Exactly.
okay.
Okay, number 10. Yeah, number 10. Follow hospital procedures, protocol from training, just things that we've just gone over. If a patient, I should have just said this, read it when I got to it. So, if a patient is asleep in their room, don't wake them. Silently pray for them. Leave the visitor's card indicating you're there. Fill your name. Okay, we talked about all that. Patient's not in the room. Please ask the nurse on duty where they can be found. You can determine if you have to wait or come back. Leave a chaplain card if you have to go. Again, check and see if the family's there. Sometimes they might be in the cafeteria. Sometimes I've gone in there and had lunch, you know, with the family, if you know the family or something like that. Just, you know, go in, just kind of hang with them, have lunch, and then, you know, leave. But again, if you don't have the time to do that and there is no family there and stuff, just the visit is leaving that card and just praying for them and leaving the room. That's totally considered a chaplain visit, okay? The visit call report to the visitation dispatcher is very important. Okay, so this is the thing where we want to talk about after your visit is done. After you visit, call, send a text, you can do an email, leave a message or an answer if there's no one there. But send an email with the following updated information. And I always found it's better as soon as you leave the hospital, maybe you're sitting out in the car, especially if you want to text or something, just text right then. Hey, just left, blah, blah, blah. You can just be really short because we don't have to have massive details. We just want to make sure, are they still there? You know, were you able to pray for them? Will they be in there tomorrow? You know, type of thing. You know, and the thing could be, when you talk to them, say, might be released tomorrow. That's great information for Shirley or Michelle not to really send another chaplain that next day because they're probably going to get released and maybe some of you can't do your visit. You're at work, you can't do your visit till the evening, and very possible they'll boot them, you know, before you're even able to go. We worry about we'll work on that, but it's just to tell you how important the call is when you leave. That gives us the information, and then we decide, hey, what do we do the next day for the next chaplain? Do we send somebody there? We'll call the hospital ourselves. Have they been released? You know, we tell them, and usually they'll tell us if they're going to be released. Sometimes they don't, just because of laws or whatever. But when we tell them it's a church or it's a pastor calling, a chaplain calling, they're usually pretty good about giving us information. Because I just say, hey, I'm trying to dispatch a chaplain, send a chaplain up there. You know, is this person here? And you know, that type of thing. They're usually really, really good about it. So, okay, where am I at here? Okay, visit call report. How was the visit? How was the call? What's the current condition of the person being visited? Did they have surgery? Are they being released? Would they like another visit? A lot of times people, will get a call, say, hey, we're just going in, we're only gonna be there for a day. They get in there, that person ends up staying for a week, just because of, no telling what's going on and stuff. So that's why it's real important for you guys to kind of give us feedback on what's going on. Very last page here, you can see this hospital report here below is the information that's needed to report back. Michelle, I didn't give out your cell number. I didn't know whether you wanted to do that or not. If you would prefer them just to email you or just call the church, what would you want to do? I'm putting you on the spot, I know. Sorry.
No, it's
I'll
okay.
pray for you afterwards.
I don't
Forgive me.
mind, no, I don't mind having a cell,
Okay.
my cell number.
Why don't you give everybody your cell number?
Just don't text
Just
me for
don't give-
benevolence, please.
What is
Jesus.
Good one, Michelle. Okay.
All right, has everybody got Michelle's phone number?
No.
No, she didn't give it to us.
623
Mm-hmm.
687 1847.
Okay. You are now connected to Michelle.
Yes.
So she'll probably be sending texts and different things too. That's probably the fastest way to,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
or
probably.
the easiest way to do it. Everybody get that? 623-687-1847. So that's Michelle. And then you see Shirley's numbers here and or Shirley's email. And so basically, again, what you'll be getting is the name of the person, the name of the hospital. Did I hand out the hospitals, a
Yes,
sheet
yes,
that had all the,
yes. Uh-huh.
okay, that's old sheet, I will clarify that, but from what I can see, it's got the majority of all the hospitals that are there. And we should, we'll give you the hospital name and stuff, but you might just want to call, make sure if you're not sure, where it's at, especially Boswell and Del Webb, which one is the one furthest north, which one's the furthest, or east versus west. I forget, one of them's easier to get off of Grand, the other one's easier to go to 303. You just need to know that once you've done, visits and stuff, but.
And there's phone calls from Mesa and Chandler, but we don't send people there.
Yeah, we'll get calls. And usually what we try to do, if we know that people are working a certain part of town, like Miss Eva, Tanya Sampson, they all work that way, Linda Camus, Cherie lives way north. I sent Cherie to, oh my gosh, Lake Pleasant Boulevard and something, I don't know, it was Kim, yeah, it was way out there. She actually told me it was 20 miles, and she lives way out north. So I haven't seen the response yet, I haven't got the chaplain report back, I don't know what happened yet on that, but what we try to do, and usually on things like that, we'll try to know people that live way in those different areas, and we'll try to send people to those different things. And again, those are basically exception, not the rule. That does not happen all the time, but we do get calls from Mesa and Tempe and
Like
You
that
know, those type
Ryan,
of
like that
things.
Daniel Ryan that I had a hard time finding that, but it was far.
yeah.
It was a far, and
Yeah.
then he wasn't even in his room.
Yeah, and that was Vince Price's, I think it was Vince Price's brother or
Brother
something,
Arnold.
so. Yeah, so, anyway, again, you can see here, projected length of stay, if you guys can figure out how long they're gonna be there, if they don't know, just say you're not sure. And would they like another visit? There have been some people, believe it or not, they go to the hospital and they say, I really don't want any visits, or they don't want as many chaplain visits, so we have to make note of that, and people will actually say that. And so we respect the fact that, they really don't want to visit. So those usually come to us, but, don't be surprised if someone says, hey, I'm getting too many visits, or one of the family members might say that. And it might be someone who's maybe in a more of a long, stay dynamic or whatever. Because some people that we know really well, sometimes so many people come up, they don't get a chance to rest at all, and that's really, they're in there to get better, well, actually not to get better, they need to get out to get better, but I mean, they still need a little bit of rest, and if people are continually going in, they have to kind of entertain, they gotta talk, maybe they're in pain, they don't feel like talking, they don't feel like opening their eyes.
Well, they may not
know.
be really dressed even. mean,
Well,
not
they're,
everybody
That's
wants
they're
to.
normally not.
A lot of ladies don't like to be
That's the
seen sick.
ladies, yeah.
Right.
I don't want to be seen with my hair
No
not
makeup.
done, no
Right.
makeup. I just don't want anybody,
Yeah.
pray for me, but not here.
And I found,
Yeah.
I
Me
also
too.
found that there's only a couple, maybe 3 or 4 chaplains that will ask if they want another visit, so they'll report they would like another visit, or they won't, they don't want any more visits.
But that's a good one to ask them.
It really is.
Okay.
You know, would you like another visit? That tells us. And it's okay to ask that. You know, they'll say yes or, you know, no, I'm doing good. And then, you know, that's the thing that you would respond back to us. You would think that that would not be the case, but they're not us. And, you know, we have to respect and honor. We want to give them what they need versus, you know, be an inconvenience or something like that, so. Okay, and then if they have family there, that's a good thing to know, other than, hey, there's no family here, their family's out of state or something like that, because that helps us, you know, to know. A lot of times we kind of know some of these things when we get these calls, and we'll tell you guys this information. But a lot of times you might be going and you're feeding back to us, you know, exactly what the information is, so. Okay, any questions on-call, visiting, hospital procedures, comments?
Appropriate clothes, you didn't go over that.
Appropriate clothes? Basically, I guess, for the most part, gosh, I've gone in wearing shorts before.
Clean clothes.
So, yeah, just,
too
yeah,
tough.
just, you don't have to dress
Too
up
tough on your
to
days
go
you
there.
get sick.
I guess when I've said appropriate clothes and stuff like that, some of the things is mainly for, it's mainly for the altar call thing and stuff like that, like ladies wearing low-cut
Yeah.
blouse, you know, stuff like that, you know, you're bending over.
I've never worn shorts, I've always, you know, sometimes I work for free, I've even gone in jeans.
Yeah, it's okay, you don't have to wear a dress, anything like that, it's more just, I guess I should say modest attire.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's the way I should word that, so I'll make sure I redo that, just modest attire is all you gotta do. I mean, sometimes if I'm out and I get a call, I know someone's in the hospital and I might have been out and it's a Saturday or something, I'm wearing my shorts and my tennies, I'll still, you know, I'm not gonna go home, put on a pair of jeans and put a shirt, it's like, you know, because that's Pastor Sam in shorts too, so, you know, and sometimes it takes them a while to recognize, because I've got a Cardinals hat on and, you know, a t-shirt, a pair of shorts, like, oh, that's Pastor Sam, you know. So, but anyway, basically all I'm talking about in regards to that is just modest wear, it's okay. What you guys all have on is just totally fine, okay? That's kind of what I'm meaning on that. All right, any other questions, comments? No?
You know, that's kind of funny because that we're talking about this, because I had called Mark Bird one time. I said, well, he's at this hospital and you're on the way home, why don't you stop at the hospital? He said, oh, no. So he had been out doing construction work, and I didn't know.
Right.
So he says, no, I'm going home first.
So that was cool.
Makes sense, yeah.
That was cool. He did that. He got cleaned up and stuff. Remember, if anything, just have breath mints. You're gonna be good.
You'll be-
And for
All
the
right.
ladies, nothing sexy. We don't want to
No,
attack them.
just modest, modest. Well, you know, you're representing the Lord when you're going in.
Yeah.
You know, type of thing. And
And you're also representing
I tell you.
Skyway.
yeah, you're representing Skyway. So I guess maybe I should wear Levi's versus shorts, but
I don't know, they care.
I haven't had anybody complain yet. So. Anyway, all right, so no questions, we're gonna end this class actually early,
Okay,
that sounds good to me, sound good to you guys?
yes.
I don't got anything else to say on that, I'm not starting another, so the next week we got, Chloe's gonna be coming in, talking about, how to administer communion, if we ever do that and stuff, so that'll be a great class, and in the following class, you'll get an email from me, it'll just be a party. And then we're off for, how far are we off? Has anybody got the schedule?
December the 21st through Jeff
January something. the
Okay.
third
January
week in
11th
January.
will be the next one.
Okay, so basically 3 weeks is, so the 21st, which I'm gonna invite everybody to come back just for a little, class fellowship here, but then we're, then 2 more weeks, the 28th and the 4th, we're off. And then we'll start back up again January 11th on the, you guys are almost halfway done with the chaplain class, isn't that
That's
crazy?
amazing, that's
No.
amazing.
And then May, basically the middle of May is when you guys will actually graduate, so January, February, March, April, 4 months and a couple weeks, and you guys will be graduating chaplain class.
But there will be a Saturday class.
There is a Saturday class with Pastor Greg. That'll be sermon prep. And yes, I will have you guys meet that Sunday also, because we'll kind of go over Greg will do a huge thing, but we'll go over kind of the sermon prep. We'll go over that on Sunday. That might be a shorter class also, since Greg will speak so much. But he just wanted to be able to speak to the chaplains in training and just see you guys and be able to speak, the passions on his heart is, preaching, sharing the Word of God. So it'll be a cool thing. We'll meet in the Life Center, and I think we'll just do that in the Life Center. So, yes.
What's going on the property? We're intercessors in here, tell me.
What's going on this property?
Yes,
I don't
two
know.
big policemen, two big SUVs with
Oh,
police officers.
okay.
New ones walking around on the
I'll tell
property.
you what's going on. We
We've had a lot of
changed.
people ask us.
Yeah, we've changed who we have doing our security. We were going with an agency that had off-duty police officers and
Okay,
hired them. So there were different things that went on with the guys that we had here before that we weren't really pleased with. And so we came in contact with Goodyear. When we first came on this property, I tried to go with Goodyear because we wanted to kind of keep it in the city in which we were with. But what they said was they weren't really prepared for that. If we had them on our property and they got a call, that police officer would leave.
Yeah.
And I said, well, we're really looking for someone on here for a security, for a presence, and to help us do the traffic. That's one of the main things. We got to do the traffic. And so we opted out not to use Goodyear when we first came on this campus, which was 10 years ago. But recently, Michelle was in contact with the lieutenant here at Goodyear. He came and met with Jackie and I and Michelle. And so we have Goodyear police officers here. And what they do is they come on with their car,
yes.
which is another thing to just show people, hey, there's security, there's people on the property, there's nothing going on. They have specific roles in which they do. Their presence is supposed to be felt in the classrooms. They're to walk up and down the halls. They're to walk out in the parking lot, and just to let people know. So if someone is thinking about doing something, they may think twice because we have police officers on the campus. So it's just a way to make the campus secure. There's nothing wrong. We're able to keep the money here in Goodyear and pay these police officers, which protect and serve us. And so far, from what I understand, they're doing a super great job. People have said they're very pleasant and open, which they're supposed to be. They're supposed to say good morning and be very open, not be scary. But that was the only reason that we switched. We had a little bit of things that